think it's important to think really broadly about like, it's not just little change that we need. It's like real structural change. I don't know how you can adequately report on women's sports if you don't have a lot of women's sports reporters. And so I think that's a massive thing that still needs to change.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 192 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you. I am excited to hear what you're going to think of this episode, and I'm just thankful that you are choosing Running for Real to join you on your run, while you're doing your chores, while you are trying to get away from the kids, whatever you are doing. I appreciate you choosing to tune in to this episode, so thank you for being here. Now, today I am excited to bring you a very special guest, but before I get to that, I want to tell you about last week's episode. In case you missed last week's episode, we had a very special guest in Katie Arnold, who wrote the book Running Home, but her story is about so much more than just a book on running. You know, there's so many running books out there, but this one goes beyond it. And actually, it is about running, but it also is primarily about kind of getting over the loss of her father. And she ties running into a lot of things, but it's also about someone who is just struggling to kind of find themselves in their life again. And there's so many things that I resonated with, and I know you have too. That's why many of you have been suggesting her over the years as a guest. And I finally was able to do it and bring her on the show. And I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did too. If you missed it, you can go back and listen to it at tinamuir.com/episode 191. But today I'm excited to bring you New York Times writer and editor, Lindsay Crouse. Now, Lindsay's been making a lot of waves with what she's been doing with the New York Times. And she has kind of brought to light a lot of issues, particularly like dream maternity. You remember hearing about that, where Nike sponsored athletes were not being paid during their maternity leave and beyond. She also brought out the story about Mary Cain and the emotional abuse that she was kind of struggling through. She's done some amazing opinion docs and videos on people like Mimo, who you may remember kind of took the running world by storm with his story before the New York City Marathon last year. She also got Allyson Felix to speak out for the first time about how she was being treated. She also has written an article about her ex-boyfriend dating Lady Gaga. Lindsay has just been doing fantastic pieces for the New York Times, and she really is making a difference. She's getting awards for what she's been doing, and it's well worth. She definitely deserves all the attention and recognition she's getting. Now, I was excited to get to talk to Lindsay. We've been trying to set this up for many months, and I finally was able to find a time where we could both make it work, and it was a great conversation, and I think there's a lot in here that's going to help us progress as a society. And I hope if you enjoy this episode, you will consider sharing it with your communities, because talking about these topics is the only way that we're going to continue to make things move forward in the right direction, particularly when it comes to things around women's rights and how much further we have to go. Now, I just want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about my email list, and then I will be right to the episode with Lindsay. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Tracksmith is a Boston-based brand led by a group of runners who are committed to making classically stylish, cutting-edge apparel. And they have one simple goal: craft the most considered products on the market for runners dedicated to the pursuit of excellence. Now, I've been telling you a lot about Tracksmith and what they're doing over the past few weeks, and I've really enjoyed hearing your feedback, seeing how much you're loving them, what you're enjoying, which products you are going for. And I do have my recommendations if you go to tinamuir.com/tracksmith. That's tinamuir.com/tracksmith. I have my favorite products up there, so you can go look at directly what I am looking at, but I'm loving hearing what your choices are. They've just launched their spring collection, which is full of staples for running during this shoulder season. So whether you're looking for gear for a long run or just the best shorts for your workout, there is something there for you. Now, their aesthetic inspiration comes from the brand's New England roots, its tradition of craftsmanship, its unforgiving seasons, as many of us know, and classic style. New England, of course, is also steeped in running culture, from iconic races to legendary teams and trailblazing athletes that provide the framework for the point of view on the sport, which I absolutely love. Now, to welcome listeners of this podcast to Tracksmith, they are offering 15% off your first purchase. So to learn more, you can go to tracksmith.com/Tina Muir. That's tracksmith.com/Tina Muir, TINAMUIR, and use code Tina to get 15% off your order. Now, I've been working my way telling you through things that I'm really enjoying, and I wanted to tell you today about the Harrier Tank. I've told you about the Harrier long sleeve, but the sleeveless cousin of the Harrier long sleeve is this lightweight merino wool tank cut in a relaxed racerback silhouette. It's soft against the skin, not at all itchy. It is naturally breathable. Wool fibers quickly absorb moisture, vapor, then move it away from the skin to evaporate into the air. And merino wool also absorbs UV radiation and provides protection from the sun. Another plus as we go into the summer months. This style works well with running shorts as it does with jeans. It is just ideal for any kind of look you have going. So you can go to tracksmith.com/Tina Muir, use code Tina to get 15% off. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. I am excited you're here and excited we can finally put this together, as I feel it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to, I'm sure my audience has at least heard of your name. But for those who haven't, please, if in your own words, I'd love for you to kind of just describe, you don't have to even say your career path. You don't have to say anything specific if you don't want to. But like, who do you see Lindsay Crouse as?
Well, I'm a journalist at the New York Times. I'm an editor and I'm a producer there. And then I'm also a, somewhat competitive amateur distance runner, specifically marathons.
I would say that's definitely true. You can definitely fall into that. And, Lindsay has been making waves with these articles and op-eds that she's been writing for the New York Times. And it's just been really cool to kind of follow your journey and see how things have progressed and just see the kind of waves that have come from what you have been able to put out there. So beginning kind of with the basics, like being a writer, being a journalist, do you like that kind of side of things, of being on the other side, like behind the camera, behind the story, rather than kind of being the one who is in the focus, in the frame of the story of whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, I've had an interesting experience at the Times where almost parts of what my job is have been almost so gray that I can kind of do anything I want. In terms of which comes from when you don't have an editor specifically telling you what to do. And so I think I've always really looked up to a lot of the athletes that I've wound up covering in terms of how they've navigated issues. And it was really interesting as I kind of grew older to realize that some of the issues that I was also dealing with in the workplace, they were all kind of the same, and we weren't all kind of talking about them. But I've always thought, if I respect these athletes so much and think that they're so interesting, why not use the qualities about them that I find so interesting? Why not use those same qualities to to kind of attack the issues that we all want to change together, and use these Olympians to, for example, raise awareness for maternity issues that all of us are facing in the workplace. And I think America loves competitive female athletes. They really respect them. They especially love Olympians. And so why not capitalize on the charisma of an Olympian to raise awareness? Like, I'd love putting athletes on that side of the camera.
Yeah. And I think you do a good job of kind of, like you said, tying in your own experiences in a lot of the articles, which is good because it helps connect it to the rest of the world. I mean, I've always been very much about kind of showing that athletes are just people too, in the same way that people look up to celebrities and think they're, different. But even, especially, as we're recording this right now, everyone is trapped inside. Everyone is trapped inside. I mean, I don't know if you saw, I shouldn't really bring this up, but there was a Backstreet Boys video of them singing I Want It That Way, and they were all in their own homes. And I was like, this is so crazy. Like, they're not together, which, kind of shows it. But, I think the fact that you tie it into your own experiences and add some things, as you said, that apply to everyone, really kind of makes it resonate with a lot of women. And I want to talk a bit later about what we can do as encouraging other women who are maybe not in the limelight, don't have 100,000s of followers, but feel like they want to contribute. But we'll get to that a bit later. But, as we said, being behind the story, celebrating these Olympians, these athletes, these people who are doing extraordinary things. Did any part of you feel uncomfortable when you started to kind of come into the limelight for what you had been doing, getting celebrated, getting awards, going to things like the Oscars? Did any part of you suddenly think, "Whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for this"?
I don't know if anyone's ever ready. I think everyone deals with a certain degree of, do I belong here or not? And I think I dealt with that actually mostly before we did some of that coverage last year, where I've thought about these issues for years and years, and it's always been really hard to kind of get broader attention to the issues that I care about. And I think that was what was so rewarding about the reaction to some of the maternity coverage, to some of the work that we did with Mary Kane, for example. Obviously, I cared a lot about this, and the people that I was profiling cared a lot about it, but I didn't know if anyone else would. And so once we saw the reaction, kind of the global reaction to a lot of these stories about female athletes, then, of course, I felt like I belonged there, because it was so validating to realize the things that I cared about that I kind of thought didn't matter, because if they didn't matter, why weren't they public knowledge? Once I realized that I could kind of be that translator and help get them there, it only made me want to kind of do more. Yeah.
When you had kind of, didn't you say with I can't remember whose podcast this would have been, maybe Rich Rolls, where you said that, some of these topics you had kind of almost tried to bring out before, and they didn't really take off. Like the culture wasn't quite ready for them yet. Tell us a bit, or tell anyone who doesn't know about that a bit about what happened there, and, how a few years made a difference.
Yeah. And in some ways, I think it was the world. In some ways, I think it was me. At the Times, I started as an assistant in 2011, so a while ago. And, when you're an assistant, you certainly can't be setting agendas in terms of what the media report is going to be. I was always just kind of like pitching articles about things that I cared about. I've always been really interested in gender. I've always been really interested in competition, and obviously sports is a way that those things come out. But I think partly this was like the way that these issues were presented to me. I was just contributing to kind of like a cheerleading narrative of like, rah, rah, isn't it wonderful what all these women are doing? And I think that's partly because that was the narrative I was buying into with myself of like, I can do this. Everything will be fine if I just work hard, if I just keep my head down. And I think as you stay at in any workplace, as a woman, I think once you turn 30, as you get older, you realize that it's actually not just about keeping your head down. In some ways, the workplace isn't necessarily built for you to succeed. And I think that female athletes, once they reach a point in their career, they realize this as well. And I feel like we were all kind of realizing this in tandem. Like I look at a lot of those Olympians as almost like, and it's not a sparse stretch. I mean, like, I went to Harvard. Lauren Fleshman went to Stanford. She's the same age as a lot of my teammates. She seems a lot like them. And so I've always kind of thought of her, obviously as a source, as someone that you get information from, but also kind of as a team captain. She's just like a few years ahead of what I'm doing. And it's been interesting to kind of watch them have frustrations and kind of get more and more vocal about what those frustrations are as they had nothing to lose. And in some ways, I was kind of feeling that was my own career. I was like, why would I want to stay here if I'm not having the impact that I want to have? And I think especially like as I got into my mid 30s, I think I'd always kind of thought like, oh, at some point this is going to pay off. And then at some point, I mean, especially when I turned 35, but also before that, like last year, I was like, if I don't do this stuff now, like, when am I going to do this? Like,
or who's going to do it?
Yeah, certainly who's going to do it, but also like, what am I waiting for? And I think just kind of like changing that mindset of that something needs to change and that it's all kind of related. It's like, you can be really good, but the world isn't going to necessarily like help you with that. And I think we were all kind of experiencing that at once, but I think I'm able to offer my own thoughts and be a good conduit to the New York Times platform and like kind of help translate stories from, the running world and the sports world. They can be very insular. I think I'm good at kind of bridging those communities because I definitely have the mind of a competitive distance runner. I definitely empathize with that, or in a competitive athlete broadly, but I'm also very fluent in what it takes to influence a New York Times style audience. And those are the policymakers. Those are the people that, if you can't hit a sports marketing executive, you can definitely hit Mike Parker. And that's what I was trying to do last year. Like every time I publish something, say like, why should Michelle Obama, if she were to read this, why should she care? Why should she talk about this at the dinner party that she's at? And that's how I went into these stories and framing them. And I think that's what wound up happening. So it's exciting. It's like, that's what you should be doing when, at some point in your career, if that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from my perspective and so many others, you absolutely nail that on the head with how you were able to get that across and how you were able to, as you said, be a bridge between kind of the running industry and that competitive side of things and everyone else. It really has been just so fascinating and impressive to watch. But, going into, I'm not going to go over a lot of the things that you've talked about on other podcasts. For those listeners, she's been on Rich Roll, Mario Frioli's Morning Shakeout, a strength running podcast, Ali on the Run. There's tons more, I'm sure. So I don't want to go over too many of the same questions because you can hear her story there. But, when you're writing the articles, when you're in the middle of kind of the deep research part, and we go back to things like we said about Mary Kane, about dream maternity. So Alicia, Lauren, Cara, and, Alison Felix. These are really kind of emotional, raw, brave things for them to be sharing. And did you ever feel any kind of responsibility and pressure of, I've got to get this right? They are really putting so much on the line for me and sharing so much of themselves. This is, this has got to be good. I've got to do it right here.
Yeah, that was by far the most. I mean, the night before we published each of those things, I would almost be just like a nervous wreck, because at that point, they've done it. They've shared their story. They've gone on the record. And at that point, it's up to me to make sure that it matters. And that's really hard. That's a lot of pressure. And, particularly with Cara, who for so many very legitimate reasons, like she was a total on background source for the whole time in the dream, when I did the maternity reporting, Alison Felix as well, like on background the whole time. I never could have done it without Alison, and particularly her brother and agent, Wes Felix, who really gave the currency to the story in a way that I don't know if I could have published it otherwise, because it's one thing to say like, this did happen. It's quite another to say, this is happening now. This needs to change. And that's what Alison and her brother did. They were able to actually show me contracts. And obviously that was all off the record, but at least I had it. And with Cara, we really needed her voice. It couldn't just be one woman's story. And I would talk to her agent, Shanna, who's wonderful, for months and months and months as I worked on this. And, she was showing me things and it was all off the record, but that kind of stuff, you need a chorus. You need more than one woman. And when she finally did go on, like at first it was, if I tell you everything, if I share my story, will the New York Times lawyers back me up? And obviously I went to everyone that I work with and I was like, what can we offer her? And they're like, you just need to make sure that she's telling the truth. And that's all you can offer her. If Nike sues her, you can, which, that wasn't inconceivable by any stretch. You can tell her that you can put that on the front page of the New York Times, like on the homepage, like you can report that, because that's also true, but you can't legally defend someone for telling the truth. And the Times can't do that either. And that was tremendously stressful, because these women, they are vulnerable. Like what they're talking about is being vulnerable because they're mothers and because they're in many cases the main breadwinners in their family. And obviously that's something that I'm thinking about as well, like maybe having a child at some day. And I can only empathize right now with what that vulnerability feels like. But it was just tremendously stressful because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And did that affect you in any way, in that you were, kind of not being like a therapist role, but these people were kind of taking these emotions they'd stuffed deep down inside, or maybe shared with a spouse or a few others, and they were giving it all to you. Like, did you feel quite a weight on your shoulders that, like, wow, like this is so bad, but I don't know if I can make a difference, but B, I don't even know if what I'm going to do is going to make any kind of difference whatsoever, but they have to deal with that burden.
Yeah. Listening to all the feelings around that was really hard, because also you can't build a story around feelings. You can use feelings to elevate a story and the impact of the story and build empathy for a story. But at the end of the day, the story is the facts. And that was really where I had to really dig to figure out what is happening, what is not happening, who can change this, how can it change? Because I think a lot of athletes, like, they're not lawyers. All they understand is what's happening to them, that they're not getting paid, that their payment is being paused. In many cases, there are no actual rules for them to even cite to tell me how something can change or what's going on. It's just happening. And it's also all covered by really powerful non-disclosure agreements that are preventing them from talking about it in the first place. And so actually analyzing those interviews and the feelings and figuring out how to kind of draw out the very specific facts for an audience that doesn't know anything about any of this. Barely even, people know Nike, but oftentimes don't even know who these athletes are or what their events are. That was so hard to do that and also still all be accurate. But again, that's like where the translation comes in. It's like taking these really complicated stories that you could write a book about and breaking it down into 800 words that wound up accompanying the script to the video that we wrote. Yeah.
And I think, I definitely saw that in action in that my sister heard me talking about telling people, I think it was talking to Cara or something about not purchasing Nike. And my sister said, why not? And I sent her the few videos that accompanied the articles that you had written. And she said, wow, like, that's disgusting. And for me, I was like, yes, like, because that had obviously shown that my sister's not a runner at all, despises running. So like that, you had kind of made that point clear through running and through these people's voices. And so you did that so well. And it was nice for me to see that it actually came to life in that way. And, being in this, I want to talk about this kind of male dominated industry that we are in, and kind of a lot of these issues are around things that women need to fight for. But being in the male dominated space, being in a place where you were kind of breaking barriers, did you have any mentors, be it females or males, who kind of really just got it and understood and wanted to help and support females during this time?
Yeah, ironically, I got a male boss maybe last year or the year before that. I can't remember. And I think he kind of inherited me. And I think I was sort of like, all right, I really need to prove to this guy why he would want me to work for him. Because, when someone inherits you, they don't know you very well. Yeah. They don't know what you're good at or what you're not good at. And it actually wound up being the greatest opportunity ever, because I think for me, he was just like, yeah, go for it. Like, have an impact, do whatever you want. I'll support it. I'll invest in it. Like, but do what you think needs to happen. And no one at the Times had ever told me that before. Like, they'd never said, just go for it and do what you think needs to happen. And obviously that was incredibly stressful, especially when I realized, like, oh, wow, we are investing in this. Like, we are literally making the equivalent of a highly produced Wyden Kennedy Nike video as a way of delivering an advocacy message with like quite a bit of underpinning of journalistic underpinning under that. And once I realized just how much he was investing in me, that was really stressful, but it also just made me want to succeed. I was like, wow, I've never been set up to actually change anything before. And now I have this chance. I don't want to let it go. And I think that's kind of like a distance runner's mentality, like when someone actually like sets you up, they're not running the race for you, but they're saying, like, you can do this. Here, I'm going to help.
Do you think any part of that was the male aspect as well? Like, we always hear about how men are like, they apply for jobs that they're not necessarily qualified for, but kind of barely scrape the list of what you need to have to do it. We hear about men kind of like, go for it. It's that whole attitude. Did any part of that rub off onto you? Be like, hey, why not?
I mean, I'm really competitive, like a lot of people, like a lot of runners. And I think for me, just knowing that someone almost like was putting me in his ring for him, it made me want to blow it out of the water. Kind of. I was like, I want to be someone where at the end of this year, like when he does his like review of what he achieved, like I want to be what he achieved. And I thought that was like, it wound up working and that was great, but it was like a little competition for myself of like, how good can I be when I have this like start kind of. But I also think like beyond a gender perspective, it's just like some journalists just are really good on gender issues and understanding, like, I think it was obviously gender issues in the workplace are unfolding all over the country and the world right now from a journalistic perspective. They had not necessarily been unfolding as much in sports. I think last year we were able to do that more, but I think people just weren't looking for it the same way. But I definitely was, because like being a distance runner, it's like you can read between the, like I had women mutter this stuff to me before. It's just realizing that the truth is the truth, but it's also wrong. Mm-hmm. I think that's where talking to him and having him see the overlap between what these women were experiencing in their own sort of arena or industry and how it connected to other workplace issues all around the world in all different sectors. And also in particular, the hypocrisy with marketing. I think that's where it was like, okay, this is something we can do as long as we can prove that it's right and that it's current and that it's true. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely worth doing. Yeah. And I don't think that's like dependent on him being a man or a woman. It's just kind of like journalistic savvy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And then, obviously each of them have their own emotional aspect, kind of important aspect, but were there any of them in particular last year that really just kind of made you think, wow, I'm proud of what I've done here. I'm proud of how this has picked up steam and the changes this has made? I mean, it can be more than one.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the maternity stuff, what was really amazing about it is that I spent months and months, if not almost a year, working on the maternity issue, in part because it all just required like such original reporting. It was like creating the sources, vetting it, and it was trying to get people to break their NDAs, mm-hmm. especially when they didn't necessarily know me. So it was like relationship building. It was very, very difficult. So in some ways that was tremendously gratifying, because when I put as much work into it as I did, and I had no idea what was going to happen, again, because like I'd seen some people's contracts, but how do you prove a negative? That's just so hard. And then to actually change policy was just amazing. And I was just so relieved that no one got sued. So that was really rewarding. Of course, getting Alice, I wanted Allison to be part of that story on the record because she was just so important off the record. Mm-hmm. And kind of just seeing that, just kind of understanding the stress that she'd been through in terms of wanting to come forward and just how alone I think she felt. I was really validated to see all the support that she did get afterwards. And then, of course, with Mary Kane's story, it was just that was the kind of thing where I think so many women and girls have had at least some connection to what she went through. She was just an extreme example, mm-hmm. because she was so extremely talented. It was like her extreme talent led to extreme outcomes in terms of what she experienced. But what she experienced on its own, I mean, it was really hard to explain to my colleagues, or mostly men, like what exactly was wrong with what she experienced, because they kept asking, like, is it illegal? No, it's not illegal. Mm-hmm. What kind of abuse was it? I don't even know. Like, how do you, like, bullying, emotional abuse? They're like, bullying? Like, why is this any different from, like a wrestler being pressured to lose weight? Like, this is what sports is. And Mary, of course, also knew that, like, mm-hmm. that's the pushback. Like, that's why it was able to happen. And so actually, again, it comes down to framing of taking something that's perfectly legal, just like with the maternity stuff, so widespread that it's tolerated and kind of just normal, and actually just saying, no, this is wrong. And I think I was really relieved when we were able to do that, because that's just so hard, to actually get people to care about something that's in plain sight, not even hiding, and to say that it's wrong.
Thank you to my wonderful sponsor, Athletic Greens, for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Now, I know we hear the term supplement, we hear the term, multivitamin, and we kind of shut off, don't we? We think it's just going to be talking about this generic thing, you could get in a bottle of pills from this grocery store. But I'm telling you, friends, I believe in Athletic Greens so much. I took it the entire way through my pregnancy as my prenatal vitamin, because I believed in it so much, with the 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients that work together to help the body absorb and synthesize nutrients in a highly bioavailable form. It is the first thing I do every morning, is put a scoop of Athletic Greens into 12 ounces of water. Yes, I do like a bit more water than they recommend, and that's just kind of, I like to have it as a first drink of the day. I will drink it down while I write in my journal. I do a gratitude journal and kind of write some thoughts out about how I'm feeling. And that is my routine every single morning. I believe in this product so much. It has boosted my energy, given me mental clarity, supported my immunity during this time that I needed it the most. And I am just so thankful for this product. And I think I I know that if you give it a try, you will be too. There are many of you who have added it to your routines as well and have noticed the difference, have said there's no going back for you either, just as there is no going back for me. And I'm just excited to hear that. So you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to get 20 servings for free. That's a $79 value. So 20 servings for free by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. I absolutely love this product and I know you will too.
That's just so hard, to actually get people to care about something that's in plain sight, not even hiding, and to say that it's wrong. So
for sure,
that was really rewarding.
Have you had any young girls with the Mary Kane piece in particular? Have you had any young girls or groups that you've heard of where kind of changes have come about because of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen it not only in reporting, but also just like people coming to me. Like, I think you can just hear women and girls and journalists realizing that this is like a very fertile area to unpack. But it's been especially rewarding to me to hear of high school girls and particularly college girls, because that's a tough environment. It can be pretty insular, and to just hear those college girls really speaking up for themselves and saying like, this culture is toxic, and recognizing it for that. I think that's been, particularly like if I just stopped working tomorrow, I would still just be really happy to know that that's happened. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I've definitely seen the changes too, which has been, I mean, we've still got a long way to go, but I think from the days you and I were in college, things have definitely come along since then, which is always going to be a good thing. Now, kind of moving, I guess before I go on, having such a successful year last year, do you feel pressure in 2020 to kind of keep stepping it up, to keep making these better and better? Or are you just kind of, now you have more of a voice and more of a freedom within yourself to explore topics you want to explore? Or are you just kind of enjoying that part?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm just pretty devastated right now because I spent all of last year just, I wrote that article in January about like being 35 and running faster than I ever wanted, and having a kind of what felt like a tremendously gratifying professional breakout. And I really killed myself last year trying to build up a lot of professional momentum, and now everything's canceled. It's like it's all kind of fallen away. Obviously lost a lot of income from it. Just the momentum is already gone. And so that's really sad. And I think that it's also a really important reality check that all of this stuff needs to matter for the intrinsic value of what it was and what it is, and not where it's going. And I think that I was thinking about that every single time I did something last year. Like, what is it? This is the last thing. Would it be enough? And every time I was like, make sure it's enough. And each time in retrospect, it was enough. It was stuff I was so proud of and felt that was so just vital to start those conversations and to see where they took off from there. And so I'm really glad that I was able to do that, because that's what happened. It's all gone. Like, sports is canceled right now, and who knows when they're going to come back or what the landscape's going to come back to. And when it comes back, I mean, this is going to air in June. It's going to be a whole new world. Normal isn't going to exist, and normal as we know it now. And so, I was thinking today that working really hard on past projects feels a lot like playing a violin just like really loudly on the Titanic right now.
I saw you put that right before we spoke. Yeah.
It's like you're clinging to something that is changing. And so I think I'm just trying to look at it as, what are the silver linings to that? How can you grow from change? Like, nothing really positive comes from things staying the same. That's not very interesting. So like a lot of people, I hope things don't go right back to normal. I hope I don't get back like right on the same horse. I hope things come back better, but I don't know what better is right now. It might be something totally different. Yeah,
I mean, you're definitely going to have some ideas and thoughts, and this is, I personally believe if we choose to take it this way, this whole experience is teaching us things, and we can all learn a lot from this, but you have to be open-minded enough to see it as that and not just see it as, well, this sucks. I mean, stupid this, and blaming that person and whatever else it could be. We all can learn something.
Yeah. And at the same time, recognizing that it does suck, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And being okay with saying that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Have you taken time aside to write kind of for yourself to, you know, as you said, all of those articles last year did so well. And right now with kind of, I don't know how many less gigs you have right now, but is any part of you trying to take back writing for yourself and finding new ways to explore it that make you happy, like on kind of the same thing as when you lose joy of running because you're focusing on the finish line? Have you managed to do the same within writing?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, one of the silver linings that I've tried to get from what's happening right now, at least, and I think everything is kind of changing from week to week in terms of both on a, you know, just how bad this crisis is and just how able we are to respond to it in constructive ways. But I've definitely felt like in some ways I really needed a rest. In running. Obviously, when you run a race, you take a break afterwards and you kind of reset. And with me, I have a full-time job at the Times, which is producing our short documentary series, curating it from outside contributors. And so all of the stuff that I did on sports reporting was kind of outside of my job. Which is to say that anytime I finished a major enterprise reporting project, I had to go back to do my regular job and catch up on that. And so that was very tiring. So I've definitely found that this is the break I needed for sure. It's obviously not what I would have wanted. It's not how I would have wanted this to happen. In many ways, I would have been happy to just keep running, metaphorically. But in some ways, a break is great. It's a wonderful time to reset. And I haven't had a lot of time to write for myself. And obviously this year, I'd spent a little time doing less kind of reported work and more, I guess, like what thought pieces would be the way that you'd put it. And I think I'm just trying to take things as they come and not be as calculated about where they're going, because I don't think any of us are able to control that right now. For sure.
And even, you know, talking to you in the fall last year when kind of everything was really not up in the air, but it was big with all the Mary Kane stuff, and you were still trying to train for CIM and you were feeling burned out. And it was kind of, I remember thinking to myself at that point, God, like, I hope she takes some time off, like not just from running, but from like the intensity of life right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, this has kind of been that, you know, maybe you didn't want it in the same way that when we have an amazing race, we don't want to like stop. We want to keep going and go to the next one. This has kind of forced you into that, which, you know, it's probably been good for you in many ways. It's just same as, again, tying it to a different running analogy, being injured, you're never going to be like, oh, this is so much fun. I love this right now.
Yeah. And that's totally where I was. I've never been so overwhelmed in my life because I had just, after the dream maternity stuff, I just wanted to, my plan was to just train for the marathon and try to do as well in that as I could. And I've always really loved having running and work kind of as a pendulum, like kind of balance each other out. But I was very aware that it was all too much. But I didn't want to give up on the marathon, right? And I'm glad that I didn't in retrospect, but it was really hard.
Yeah, I could see that. And let's talk about that. You mentioned the article or the piece earlier on kind of being 35, running faster than ever. And I will put links, by the way, to all of these articles we mentioned in the show notes for those of you listening. But you talked in this piece about kind of being inspired by all the fast women that you were learning from and seeing, and how women's running in the US, but I also see it back in the UK, like amongst the athletes there. Things have definitely, my time when I ran it 4 years ago definitely wouldn't be anywhere near what it is now. But so kind of across the board, women's running is kind of continuing to improve. Tell the listeners, like, how did that translate in your mind? People who do it for a living, they have just that to focus on. They can do their training anytime, to kind of applying it to yourself, who, as you said, you have a full-time job. All these other women have full-time jobs and maybe kids, and they have all these other things going on in their life. So in a totally different situation to the pros, but it still kind of inspired you and so many others.
Yeah, I mean, watching the professional athletes has always been really inspiring to me. I mean, there's just no way that as an American woman, you can't be really excited about what's happening right now. If you follow the sport, I think it's just so exciting. And that just keeps going. And then, watching the sub-elite women for me it was just so exciting for me when I realized that I have a lot in common with those women, like the women that are really good right now, not only age-wise, kind of like career wise in terms of what we're all really different, but like we're all, I just really connect to those women. And it was really cool for me. I think the most empowering thing for me was to realize that a lot of them didn't think of themselves as being like the fast ones. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us deal with that on one level or another, like, you know, from maybe not the fastest women in this country, but we've also, at this point, like by the time you get into your 30s, we've all had peaks and valleys in a way. And I think I've talked about this a little bit, but I had a period of injuries right around the time that I turned 30 where I just thought that was it and it was over. And like, because that's what happens sometimes, right? Yeah. And so all of this has just felt like to get faster now for me has felt like, I don't know, I just had no idea that was even going to be possible. But it was also cool to realize that like I'm faster than I literally ever thought I was going to get. And I wasn't one of the fast ones, particularly in college when I felt like I had a better understanding of what like the national, like who the really fast people in this country were. Like mm-hmm. I never would have thought I could try to qualify for the trials. And so it was like, even just the trying for me was like feeling like I had the permission to even try, was so gratifying and really only happened because there were other women like me who mm-hmm. didn't think that they were necessarily people that thought they should be doing that either. Mm-hmm. So cool. It's like, it's something that I think American women should be more aware of. You have like permission to like rebrand yourself in your mind or something, not just in running, but in other things.
I think that's so true. And actually I've heard Brene Brown talking about that. I'm assuming you know who Brene Brown is, talking about that, saying that, yeah, just one person giving permission in their own life is enough to inspire or potentially inspire everyone in their life.
Yeah.
But I mean, that the other people obviously have to take that and then use it themselves. But that's kind of what was going on here. These other women giving themselves the permission to say, I'm going to try, you know, I may not make it, but I'm going to give it my best. And then you doing it on kind of a broader scale to access more women kind of just gave even more women the ability to do that. And I loved that so much that you were able to kind of take that message and share it with the wider community and tell the listeners that, you know, you didn't reach your goal, you didn't run that OTQ, but that didn't really matter in the end. So tell us kind of what your, you know, reflection feelings were after that.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I knew I wasn't. It was like right around the time when I just had so much work in October. I was like, I think there was one week where I ran 50 miles and I was supposed to be running like by my plan, like in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, it's going to be fine. I'm like, no, it's not. It's like, I know how biology works. Like mm-hmm. you need to actually do the preparation in order to get where you want to go. And that was a choice that I made and that was fine. And so I'd already kind of known that I wasn't going to necessarily qualify and that was fine. I did think I could have broken 250, but it was sort of like I have no business trying to run a 249. Like that's crazy to me. And I do know that I could have done that. Like I still wonder if I could do it if races ever happen again. It doesn't feel very relevant right now. But I also think it's just the trying, right? And so I was a little disappointed at the end of it just for not breaking 250, not for qualifying, because I just knew that would just been unrealistic. You know, so I took a few days and also I had a hard race. I went out with someone who was in 249 shape that I met on the bus, you know, and I thought that would have been a really great story. And then by mile 8, when I was running like 6:25, so I was like, okay, this is not a good idea. So I was disappointed by finishing really slowly, but you know, I think I was over a 3-hour pace by the time I was finishing. But that's the beauty of the marathon. I think it's about the preparation. It's not really about the race. Like the race is about like proving what you did, not that you actually did it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I was just so happy. And it's also funny because by the time you're explaining any of this to your colleagues at work who don't run really, they're just like, yeah, whatever. I don't care what you failed to do. Like you were really fast. And then it's just a nice reality check, right? That you did do something really cool and that you did work for something really hard and that it did pay off.
Oh, yeah. Well, for the average person running, you know, you ran 256, 254?
53.
Okay. So, yeah, 249 or even 244 to 253 to the average person.
What's the difference,
yeah,
right?
Like you might as well have not bothered. And I've actually told this story quite a lot. My first marathon, I remember the day after, I was really disappointed because I'd blown up spectacularly. Mm-hmm. And I walked I was doing my MBA and I was around all my classmates and they said, oh, you ran the marathon. And I said, yeah, And they were like, congratulations. And they turned around and walked off. And I was like, but I didn't tell you how bad I did. And like, to me, that was such a like pivotal moment, because I was like, they don't care. Like, to them, you did it. And that's it. That's enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how we build these things up and make them seem so like there's such a massive difference, but really they're not. So,
and I love that perspective, right? Like that is important, that like you tried and that's enough.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely lose that. And this period is putting things in perspective for us a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
And then switching gears, I wanted to earlier on ask you about kind of this being in this male dominated industry. And obviously you've made massive changes with what you've been able to put out there. But, you know, I still see quite a lot of tweets and things put out by people saying that even, you know, at the New York Times, there'll be days where there's not a single, you know, woman in the sports section, things like that. Do you find that frustrating being in this industry, knowing that like, yes, you're making strides, but in some ways do you get frustrated that it's not happening fast enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity still. I think part of the reason why we don't have the kind of coverage of female athletes that we might want to see is that, or that we might enjoy as female athletes ourselves and just women, is that we don't have a lot of women reporters, like sports reporters. Like I'm not a sports reporter. So I don't work for the sports section. And I think that's partly why I've had the creative freedom to do stuff that if I did maybe have an editor, maybe I'd be doing more conventional work. I have no idea. But I think it's important to think really broadly about like, it's not just little change that we need. It's like real structural change. Like you can't, I don't know how you can adequately report on women's sports if you don't have a lot of women's sports reporters. And so I think that's a massive thing that still needs to change.
Have you seen things where people have, tried to apply for jobs and haven't got it? Or like, have you ever been made to feel like you're kind of the outsider in a male dominated world?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you deal with that? And what would be your advice to other women who are, you know, maybe someone listening wants to be a sports reporter, but isn't sure, you know, how to break in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I only did any of this stuff in my mid-30s. It's like I just stopped waiting for someone to give me a job and let me do it. And I just did it. Like I wasn't supposed to be doing this stuff the way that I did it. And I just decided I'm just going to keep trying. I'm not going to ask for permission anymore. As long as I know that what I'm doing is right and needs to happen, I'll just do it until someone makes me stop.
Mm-hmm. So what would be your advice for the average woman listening who thinks, okay, well, I'm not a opinion writer at the New York Times. As I said, I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers. No one's going to listen to me. I'm not that kind of impact person. How can I make a difference?
Yeah, I think you need to not wait for the system to accommodate you, but to work within whatever system you have, like whatever situation you're in, to make that work for you. And I think ultimately that's what will actually make the quality of your work stronger. I think I didn't have the advantage of just being able to do sports journalism. I had to do sports journalism that we would publish in a department that wasn't just looking for content. And I think there are ways. I mean, it sucks. I don't think anyone wants to be in this situation, but there are ways to turn disadvantages or like being the underdog into an advantage if you look for it. Which again, I think it's totally valid to spend time thinking about why people, and in particular women, have to do that. But while we're thinking about that, if what you want to do is just the work, there are ways around these structural disadvantages. But I think it's important for me right now as well to not forget why it was hard in the first place and to keep doing whatever we can to change that. In addition to, it's like once you get into the arena, don't forget why it was so hard to get there and try to change that for other people.
For sure. And then just for someone who's thinking, okay, but you know, Lindsay, I'm not as strong as you. Like if I'm in this industry where guys are going to make fun of me or say like, sit down, little girl, or whatever it may be, like, I'm going to run off and cry. And I don't know if I can handle that. Would you have any advice?
I mean, not good advice because I haven't figured that out for myself, unfortunately. I've been told before that I don't deserve to make what other people make, or, I've been through all of that, and I don't have any great solutions for it. I think all you can do is think about why you want to do this. And if why you want to do it is really important to you, then do it. And then once you get what you want, try to fix it for other people. I don't think there's any other way. You can't, if you don't have any power, you can't change a system. All you can do is try to think of creative ways to get that power and then hopefully pay it back.
Friends, you've probably heard me saying over the past few months that I am currently taking 3 months off from working while I enjoy time with my new baby. Now, please make sure I stick to this. If you see me doing things work online, that is time for you to get in touch with me, say, hey, what are you doing online? Now, I will let you know my assistant, Amber, is going to be taking over some things for me. Some things I have prepared ahead of time. But if you notice that it seems to be very real time, please let me know, because I promised myself I would take 3 months off and I need to be able to stick to that. Now, that being said, there is one thing that I'm continuing to do during this time. Not these podcasts. These podcasts were recorded ahead of time. You've got these interviews to enjoy. There will not be a break in episodes during this time. And I'm really thankful for guest host Sarah Crouch for taking over some of those. But the one thing that I am going to be doing during this time is writing my email newsletters on a Monday. Now, there's over 7,000 of you already signed up for these emails. I know you love them. I love seeing your replies come in every week. And you can sign up at tinamuir.com/subscriber. That's tinamuir.com/subscriber. All it is kind of an update, something I'm thinking about for the week, something that I'm appreciating, and it really makes you think. I love that I have the ability to get into people's heads and really make a difference. And then at the bottom, I give some things I'm enjoying, some updates, just some things that you may have missed throughout the week that I would have shared. And it's just something that's very kind of friend to friend. It just feels like I'm emailing you just to kind of let you know my updates. And I would love for you to be a part of the 7,000 other runners who are on this list. You can go to tinamuir.com/subscriber. That's tinamuir.com/subscriber to sign up. And I will see you every Monday.
I've been through all of that, and I don't have any great solutions for it. I think all you can do is think about why you want to do this. And if why you want to do it is really important to you, then do it. And then once you get what you want, try to fix it for other people. I don't think there's any other way. You can't, if you don't have any power, you can't change a system. All you can do is try to think of creative ways to get that power and then hopefully pay it back.
Yeah, pull other women up
with you. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then, we can obviously do what we can. We can raise other women up. We can challenge as much as we are, prepared to do, brave enough to do, as much as our situation allows. But what in your opinion is the next big challenge for women? What is the thing that we want to be working on now so that little girls and teenagers coming up in the future can kind of take us the next step towards this equality?
I'm not sure, but I think one thing that I'm really committed to trying to help is this idea that there's just one slot. What I loved about the Olympic marathon trials was the idea that you could all get there, and you could all go if you did the work and you hit the requirement, and a requirement that of course was ridiculously hard, especially for someone like me. But I just loved the idea that if I did the work, I could get there. And real life isn't like that. Real life in the workplace is often structurally set up so that if you're a woman in sports, for example, there's only room for one of you. Mm-hmm. And that's really bad. We can't just have it that women are tokenized, or women are the inspirational content that we do for extra credit, or women are embattled. And so we need to talk about all these problematic issues. I just want women to be completely equal. And that means equal slots for the women too. And that will help women from competing against each other too. And help. I don't think men always feel oh, there's only room for one of me. And I think women still feel like that a lot, or that, okay, we've got one, so we don't need more. And we don't feel like that with men. Men are the default, especially white men. And I think that's something that it's not just women's job to do that. That's, again, that kind of structural issue that I'm talking about. That's the whole system that needs to change. Mm-hmm. But women should be a big part of that, because we can either perpetuate that or we can work to change that. And I actually love right now, like with all the podcasters and with social media, that like you guys aren't fettered by editors or like people hiring. All you're able, like, of course it's hard for you guys too, but if the audience wants to watch what you create, you can just go straight to them. And I think that's an amazing first step. Like there's not a quota of like how many female people there can be in distance running right now, like in the ecosystem writ large. And I think that's amazing, because it means that you're getting outside of the structure, right? Like you're getting outside of the institution and doing it yourself. But there are also huge challenges to that. Like you probably don't, like, I can't speak to your salary or your benefits or whatever, like you're self-employed. And I want other people with these sort of institutional benefits, like, which I have through a different job at the time. So it's like, we should all have this. There should just be room for one.
For sure. Yeah, no, thank you. Those are all such important points. And I often also think, related to the structure needs to change, but I think we as women also need to change our mindset. And, there's plenty of books out there. Brave, Not Perfect is one that comes to mind. And as I said, Brene Brown has a ton of this, but we need to break out of this thing of like, good girls are quiet, good girls are helpful, good girls are selfless and just give. And to be a good mum, you have to just be, give your all to your children and be nothing in return. You need to just be quiet as a woman. You need to, all those things. Whereas, little boys from the day that they're born, they're told, go play in the mud, go get yourself dirty, go explore the world, go fall off a tree if you want to climb it. Like, and that Brave, Not Perfect book I mentioned, I'll put a link in the show notes for anyone. That one really kind of spoke to me and thinking, wow, there's so many of these things that have been ingrained in us from the day that we're born. It's only when we realize that we don't have to fit into this good girl mold that things are really going to be able to change for us.
Yeah, but to push back on that a little,
go for it.
To that point, I think that's why we need to have more girls play sports, because sports actually teaches you not to do any of that, right? Like that's where I learned that you couldn't just be nice, right? Like who's going to win? Like what's the point in playing sports if you're just letting the other team win? I also think though, that's why every girl should play cross country or run cross country, because it shows that you don't have to win and that you can still contribute, but you still have to work really hard. But I think you're right that girls are obviously, cultured to be submissive a little bit, but at the same time, sports is one of the best antidotes, I think, in a healthy way that we have to teach girls how to have those qualities, but also still operate within a world that's going to treat them that way and reward them when they do have those qualities. Like, so it almost teaches them to survive in a world that's expecting them to be that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And starting it at that young age with sports is a way to kind of build that confidence. And we've seen, we've seen plenty of studies and things on how much that can make a difference, and seen it visibly. I mean, we've all seen it with how much confidence it can bring to young girls, which is wonderful. I just want to, I was more kind of talking to the woman out there listening who we talked about earlier. I don't have power. I don't have the bravery to speak up and say something's not right. But to those of you listening who think that way, think about how things have been ingrained in you, like how you want to be the good girl. You don't want to make waves. You don't want to upset your mother by making her embarrassed that you spoke up about something, or your boss embarrassed because you spoke up about something. Like, challenge the way that you're seeing things and wonder if how much of that is you and how much of that is kind of you've been told to be a good girl. So I just
and also question the world that is expecting you to do that, because these women who feel this way aren't wrong. Like, the world rewards them for being nice. The world rewards them for being submissive. And so don't just assume that it's all you that can change that, right? Like, more things have to change than just our minds.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And thanks for pushing back on me, because I really love having these kind of discussions. And again, like the whole concept of what we're talking about right now, the fact that you and I are kind of bouncing back and forth a bit here is proving that point, not saying, yeah, you're right. Or, my mom always says, yeah, that's nice, when when I know she's just kind of being, accepting and just wants to move on from the conversation because it's, not just a straightforward one. So thank you for pushing back as well.
I think it's fascinating. There's no right answer to any of this. Yeah. The only way that we get there is by talking about it.
Absolutely. Okay, so Lindsay, how can people find out more about you? As I said, I will put lots of links in the show notes so you can go read those, but where can people go find you and follow you in the future?
I'm just my first name dot last name on pretty much everything, I think, or not even the dot. It's just Lindsay Crouse, like Instagram, Twitter.
With an A.
I don't know what. Yeah. LINDSAYCROUSE. I don't know. What is it? Instagram, Twitter. I feel like that's it for me. Email, everything else.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you so much for all that you've done on behalf of women and the running industry and just kind of everyone, really, for putting your heart out there, the way that you've chased these pieces, the things that you've done, not even just in those powerful articles, but things like the video that you did on Mimo and, putting yourself out there with, as we said, talking about your ex-boyfriend dating Lady Gaga, all these things that you've done, you're really breaking down barriers with it. And, I'm just so happy to see you getting kind of the recognition you deserve. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me. It's nothing would matter if we didn't elevate each other and amplify each other's voices. So thanks so much.
So true. Thank you. My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Just want to take another moment to thank Lindsay for all that she has done in this community. There are few people in the running world who have made as big of a difference as she has. And I'm just really thankful that we had that time to kind of go deep with her, to talk about things, to figure out what we can try and do moving forward. So I want to thank you for listening. I know you have plenty of podcasts you could be choosing from. There are new ones popping up every week. And I appreciate the fact that you are here with us now, showing that you care and just learning. And I appreciate you so much. Now, I want to tell you anything, if you want to go look up any of Lindsay's articles, or if you want to learn more about Lindsay, you can go to the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 192. And there will also be links in there to go get 15% off Tracksmith. Now, you've heard me talking about how much I appreciate Tracksmith for their support of me, but they also have the most amazing clothes. You heard me talking about it during the episode, but also I just want to remind you that these are just so well thought out. They're really good quality and comfortable for lifestyle and obviously for your running. And if you want to get 15% off, you can go to tracksmith.com/TinaMuir, or you can go to tinamuir.com/tracksmith, and you can see which products I am loving the most. If you use code TINA, TINA, you will get 15% off. Now, next week, I am excited that next week we have a very special interview with Molly Seidel. Now, you may or may not, probably do, remember Molly kind of shocking everyone by finishing second at the US Marathon Trials a few months ago. And although the Olympics has been postponed to the following year, it was great to talk about, well, we did talk a little bit about the trials in that situation, but we actually talked a lot more about Molly's life behind the scenes, some of the struggles she's been going through, some of the things she's learned about college sports. And it just was a really deep, open conversation. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about this episode, because I think it is a very, very powerful one. So you'll be able to tune in to get that one next week. But until then, my friends, have a wonderful week. And remember to sign up for my email list if you want to get my newsletter every Monday while I am gone on my maternity leave. That is the only way that I am connecting with everyone right now, is just that once a week mundane email newsletter. You can go to tinamuir.com/subscriber to go sign yourself up.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.